So another week, another scandal involving South Carolina judges. And the scandal this week wasn't so much what the judges did, it was what the people who were in charge of appointing them failed to do. And I'm talking about the South Carolina General Assembly, both House members and senators, who gathered this week to vote on a slate of judges. Now, I reported on this earlier this week and asked readers to guess how many of these races did lawmakers have a chance to pick a new judge? How many of these races were contested? In other words, how many opportunities did lawmakers have to throw out judges who consistently let violent criminals go free? And the answer to that question was 0. 0. There were no contested races. So you start thinking, okay, who's to blame for that? Well, lawmakers, because they're the ones who screen the judges. They're the ones who clear them for nomination. And then again, they're the ones who ultimately vote on them. So the lack of choice, the lack of options that they had, is totally their fault. And again, as I said earlier this week, where there is no choice, there is no accountability. Where there are no options, no one is held responsible. It's the same thing over and over again. And as I've pointed out for years now, the consequences here are deadly. We're talking about material impact on public safety, materially deleterious impact on public safety. Now, one of the judges that I talked about this week in our coverage is a guy named Daniel Hall up in York County. This is a circuit court judge, ran for re-election this year, had a very qualified opponent who wanted to run against him, who was eminently qualified. In fact, lawmakers had found her qualified to be a lower level judge earlier this year. They refused to screen her out in this case. They refused to put her name in nomination for this judgeship because they knew she was going to beat this judge. So they found her unqualified. Unqualified. Unbelievable. Now, Judge Hall gets in there. He's the only name on the ballot. I want to tell you a little bit about this guy. This is a guy who within the last 5 years, he has given probation to a pregnant woman who had a baby and then killed it, buried it in her backyard, gave probation to a peeping Tom, who victims and prosecutors said should have been in jail, gave probation to a woman who mowed down an 11-year-old boy in a fatal hit and run. The kid pushed his little sister out of the way of this oncoming car. Woman just drove off. Gave her probation too. Most egregiously though, Hall takes a guy who's been accused of criminal domestic violence of a high and aggravated nature. This is the highest level of domestic violence on the books, a felony. A guy who has not once but twice defied judges' orders to stay away from his alleged victim. Judge Hall lets this guy go free. And within 3 months, kills not only his wife, his 5-year-old son, and then turns the gun on himself. This is the guy that lawmakers reelected. And we've got the vote, we got the roll call on that here, and I'm going to put it up. And we're going to take a look at it right now. And, I got some friends on there who voted the wrong way. And, I'm not going to hide that. Very disappointed in those guys. Senator Tom Davis, he's in here just the other day on medical marijuana. He's a good friend of mine. He inexplicably voted to give this guy another term on the bench. Again, totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. Judges in South Carolina have one job, people, and that is to protect public safety. It is to uphold justice, uphold the interests of public safety, and they are failing miserably on that score, miserably. And it is not just one judge, it's an epidemic. It's an epidemic, and I've been covering it for years, and again, waiting on lawmakers to take office that will, for once, start holding these judges accountable. Now, in addition to judges who aren't doing their job, we got corrupt judges. And that was a big focus of our coverage again this week. And I'm referring to judges down in the 14th Judicial Circuit, which is, again, the home of the Murdaugh family. Folks have been following this story very closely. The Murdaugh murder saga, multiple investigations into 53-year-old Alec Murdaugh. He's a disgraced attorney from Hampton, South Carolina. He's the scion of a very powerful family down there, the Murdaugh family. 3 of his relatives have been solicitor down there, district attorney, if you will, and also one of the partners in a very prestigious, or formerly prestigious law firm down there, which handled a lot of these cases. Now, there's 2 judges down in Hampton County in the 14th Circuit that this news outlet has been focused on. One of them is Judge Carmen Mullen. Now, a lot of readers are familiar with her because she was the presiding judge in a public corruption investigation in Columbia about 4 years ago. This was the Probegate investigation involving allegations of pay-to-play politics at the State House. Now, Judge Mullen did not acquit herself particularly well in that case. She showed a lot of favoritism to the defendants, showed a lot of favoritism to the corrupt politicians. And so I criticized her often during that process, but she is once again under the microscope as it relates to her proximity to the Murdaugh family. And specifically, she's under fire for some questionable settlements that have resulted in criminal charges against Alec Murdaugh, particularly for approving these settlements and in one case allegedly failing to enter the documents into the public record. Just a huge violation of the basic tenets of justice. She's one of the judges that's under the microscope. There's another judge down there, Perry Buckner. I've talked to attorneys who've had cases before Buckner tell me he actually sold his law firm to the Murdaughs prior to taking a seat on the bench, and of course delivered favorable ruling after favorable ruling to the Murdaughs. Now, again, in the financial scams that this news outlet has been following, and in a lot of cases has exclusively uncovered thanks to the diligent work of Mandy Matney, our news director. Just cannot credit her enough for the investigative reporting she's done to uncover a lot of these scams. But for these scams to take place, it involves 3 different factors. Obviously, you got to have the lawyers who are involved, who draw up the paperwork, who tell the clients, well, you got this much in the settlement when really they should have gotten a lot more. But you got the lawyers, you got the bankers. Somebody's got to sign the checks, right? But then the third leg of that is the judges. And that's one that a lot of people haven't been focused on. And so I wrote a big column this week drawing attention back to the fact that, hey, it's not just the Murdaughs and their attorneys and their cronies. It's not just the bankers, who, by the way, we're told that this is going to be the month we're going to see some indictments related to that side of this equation. But it's also the judges. The judges had to play a part of this. So, again, stay tuned for much more on that. But in the meantime, I wanted to cut real quickly to our executive editor, Liz Farrell. She broke some interesting Murdaugh news this week regarding an incident that took place back in 1993 involving Alec Murdaugh. Let's cut to Liz.